Dreams of the Summer of Love, a gentle journey through Haight-Ashbury. Chapter 1. The Painted Houses Wake. In the hazy hush before dawn, the streets of Haight-Ashbury nestle beneath a soft blanket of fog. Layer after layer, the mist weaves between delicate iron fences and the gentle curves of ornate Victorian homes. Painted in sleepy pinks, mudded lavenders, and buttercream yellows, these houses seem to drowse peacefully, their window panes catching the faint promise of morning. The city, too, is only just beginning to yawn awake. Somewhere in the gentle labyrinth of these painted streets, wind chimes stir with the first whisper of breeze. Their crystalline notes dance through the fog like scattered fairy dust, creating a symphony so subtle it might be mistaken for the neighborhood's collective dreams. The Victorian houses stand like patient guardians, their elaborate gingerbread trim catching dewdrops that glisten like tiny prisms, breaking the early light into rainbows that shimmer against pastel walls. Each home tells its own story through color and ornament. Here, a powder blue cottage with white scrollwork around its windows. There, a sage-green mansion with turrets that spiral toward the lightning sky. Flower boxes overflow with trailing nasturtiums and morning glories, their blooms still closed in slumber, waiting for the sun's gentle kiss to unfurl their petals. The iron railings, painted in complementary hues of rose and cream, create intricate shadows that shift and dance as the fog begins its slow retreat. The first rays of sunlight hesitate on the edge of the horizon, then slowly seep through curtains and over rooftops, coaxing soft colors into brighter relief. Jasmine drapes itself across stoops, its fragrance mingling with the cool air, as if nature herself is stirring from a gentle dream. In the distance, the sound of an acoustic guitar weaves into the morning, faint, almost imagined. Perhaps it is real, or perhaps it is a memory the neighborhood shares. As the light grows stronger, it reveals the intricate details that make each house a work of art. Bay windows curve outward like embracing arms, their stained glass panels casting colored light onto hardwood floors within. Doorways are framed by carved wooden arches painted in deep purples or sunny oranges, creating portals that seem to promise adventure and belonging in equal measure. The roof lines create a gentle roller coaster against the sky, with chimneys crowned with decorative caps and weather vanes that spin lazily in the morning air. Small gardens flourish in the spaces between houses, tended by invisible hands that understand the language of growing things. Lavender bushes release their perfume to mingle with the jasmine, while climbing roses begin their ascent up trellises painted to match their host houses. Flower beaters hang from porch eaves, already drawing the attention of sparrows and finches, who add their cheerful chatter to the morning's gentle soundtrack. Down these painted streets, the world moves slowly. Footsteps are muffled on dew-dampened sidewalks, and sleepy cats stretch in windowsills, blinking at the golden light. Newspaper boys on bicycles navigate the quiet streets, their wheels whispering against the pavement as they deliver the day's news to households still wrapped in morning dreams. The painted ladies of Haight-Ashbury stand ready to embrace another day of possibility, their colors growing more vibrant as the sun claims its place in the brightening sky. Chapter 2: The Corner Where Music Lives. As sunlight brightens, so too do the rhythms of Haight-Ashbury. Sleepy cafés begin to open their doors, the scent of coffee mingling with the dusty vinyl and the tang of fresh bread. These small spaces, tucked between rows of painted houses, are gently transformed. A battered record player spins. Soft, scratchy melodies drift out and swirl around early risers. The Red Dog Saloon's weathered sign creaks gently in the morning breeze, its paint faded but cheerful, promising warmth and community within. Through its windows, filtered by gauzy curtains tie-dyed in sunset colors, the glow of amber light spills onto the sidewalk. Inside, mismatched furniture create cozy conversation nooks. Velvet armchairs in deep burgundy, paired with carved wooden tables that have witnessed countless conversations about art, love, and changing the world. The walls are a tapestry of concert posters, folk art, and photographs of smiling faces caught in moments of pure joy. Steam rises from the espresso machine like incense, blessing the morning ritual of awakening. The barista, a gentle soul with flowers painted on her cheeks and beads woven through her hair, moves with unhurried grace, crafting each cup as if it were a small work of art. The coffee beans, roasted dark and rich, fill the air with their earthy promise of alertness and inspiration. Regular customers drift in like familiar spirits, greeting each other with peaceful nods and knowing smiles that speak of shared understanding. Coffee houses become sanctuaries of sound. The hush of conversation is broken by soft notes, warm laughter, and the gentle clinking of cups. In the golden haze of mid-morning, the Fillmore Auditorium stands quietly, sheltering memories of nights filled with dancing lights and music that soared like birds over the city. Record shops line the street like temples to sound, their doorways crowned with hanging crystals that catch the light and scatter rainbow fragments across vinyl album covers displayed in windows. Inside, wooden crates overflow with treasures, rare pressings of Bob Dylan, the latest from Jefferson Airplane, experimental jazz that pushes boundaries like gentle rebels. The shop owners, wise keepers of musical knowledge, can guide seekers to exactly the sound their souls are craving, whether it's the haunting harmonies of Simon and Garfunkel or the electrifying energy of Hendrix. Young musicians gather in the record shop's listening booths, sharing headphones and discovering new worlds of sound together. Their eyes shine with the recognition that comes from hearing something that speaks directly to their hearts. They pass albums back and forth like sacred texts, studying liner notes and artwork with the devotion of scholars uncovering ancient wisdom. The scratchy warmth of vinyl becomes the soundtrack to their awakening consciousness. Every doorway and window seem to hum with possibility. Along the sidewalk, a pair of friends pause to listen to a harmonica echo from inside a record shop. The music floats out, neither urgent nor hurried, as if it belongs to everyone who cares to listen. Community itself becomes a slow, dreamy symphony, a gentle invitation to step inside, to belong, to let the music settle softly on welcoming hearts. Street musicians begin to emerge as the morning progresses, claiming corners and park benches as their stages. A folk guitarist with calloused fingers and eyes full of stories strums gentle melodies that weave between the sounds of the waking city. His guitar case lies open at his feet, scattered with coins and flower petals left by appreciative listeners. A flute player sits cross-legged beneath a blooming magnolia tree, her instrument's silvery voice dancing with the whisper of leaves overhead. The music creates invisible threads that connect all who hear it, weaving a tapestry of shared experience that transcends individual differences. Shopkeepers prop open their doors to let the melodies flow freely, understanding that music belongs to everyone and builds the community they all cherish. The painted houses themselves seem to lean in closer, as if listening and adding their own architectural harmonies to the growing symphony of the day. Chapter 3. Grace's Voice in the Evening Air. When evening falls, a hush descends, as though the sun's setting light itself is listening. Warm gold slips through lace curtains, coloring the walls and floors of a Victorian parlor where young musicians gather. Here, soft laughter is carried on the hush of twilight, and the low strains of an old guitar blend with the hush of the outside world. The parlor exists in a realm between day and night, where time moves like honey and every sound seems to carry extra meaning. Persian rugs and deep jewel tones cover polished hardwood floors, their intricate patterns seeming to shift and dance in the flickering candlelight. Tapestries hang from the walls, depicting scenes of pastoral beauty and cosmic wonder, while dried flowers and herbs suspended from the ceiling release their gentle fragrances into the warm air. The room breathes with the quiet energy of a space where magic is not just possible, but expected. Musicians arrive like pilgrims drawn to a sacred gathering, carrying their instruments in worn leather cases and canvas bags. They settle into the parlor's embrace, some on the ancient sofa with its faded floral upholstery, others on cushions scattered across the floor, and a few perched on the window seat that looks out over the painted street below. Their faces glow in the amber light, young and earnest and full of dreams that seem too big for the world they've inherited. Grace sits at the center, her presence neither loud nor demanding, but somehow luminous. The other musicians gather close. They talk in half whispers, tuning their instruments and passing around steaming cups of tea. When Grace sings, her voice is a silver ribbon, floating in the gentle shadows, filling the parlor with a sweet, wistful longing. Her voice weaves dreams into the air, dreams shaped like hope and rain and stars. The world outside listens, too. The neighbors on their porches, the children with their chins propped on upstairs windowsills. Grace's presence transforms the ordinary parlor into something approaching holy ground. Her dark hair catches the candlelight, and when she closes her eyes to sing, it's as if she's drawing music from some deep well of universal truth. The other musicians become her chorus and her congregation, adding harmonies that spiral upward like smoke from sacred fires. Her voice carries stories of love that transcend conventional boundaries, of consciousness expanding like flowers blooming in fast forward, and a world where peace is not just a dream, but a lived reality. The songs they create together are born from the intersection of hearts and minds, seeking something greater than themselves. Grace's lyrics paint pictures with words: white rabbits leading the way to Wonderland, somebody to love in a world that often feels loveless, and airplanes made of precious metals carrying passengers to higher planes of existence. Each song becomes a small revolution, a gentle rebellion against the gray conformity that has settled over America like dust on an old photograph. Between verses, there is the hush of deep friendship and gentle understanding. The beginnings of a band, of a movement, are simple and kind. The city listens as evening deepens, embracing Grace's songs like a blanket. In Haight-Ashbury, even the air seems to shimmer with her melodies, carried gently on the breeze, carrying the dreams of a generation softly into the night. As the evening progresses, more voices join the musical conversation. A bass player adds low, thrumming notes that seem to emerge from the earth itself, while a drummer keeps time with brushes on a makeshift kit assembled from found objects and pure intention. The music flows like water finding its level, each musician contributing their unique voice to the collective sound that fills the parlor and spills out into the neighborhood beyond. Outside, the painted houses seem to lean closer, as if the very architecture of Haight-Ashbury is drawn to the music being born within their embrace. Porch lights flicker on like earthbound stars, and residents emerge from their homes to stand quietly in their gardens, letting Grace's voice wash over them like a benediction. Children pause in their evening games, instinctively understanding that they are witnessing something important, something that will echo through their lives long after the last note fades into the gentle darkness. The parlor becomes a vessel for something larger than the sum of its parts, a space where individual creativity merges into collective vision, where the personal becomes universal, and where the simple act of making music together becomes a form of prayer for a more beautiful world. Grace's voice rises and falls like breathing, carrying with it the hopes and dreams of everyone who believes that love, music, and peace can change everything. Chapter 4: Jerry's Garden of Sound. As nighttime settles, the world breathes a little slower, and music grows as naturally as wildflowers in Golden Gate Park. Beneath trees strung with leftover sunlight, Jerry Garcia and his friends gather in a quiet circle. There is no hurry here, only the gentle patience of creation. A guitar is passed around, picked up, set down, each song blooming slowly, improvising like vines seeking the warmth of summer. The circle forms without ceremony in a grove where ancient oaks create a natural cathedral, their branches arching overhead like the ribs of some great breathing creature. Jerry sits cross-legged on a worn blanket, his gentle eyes reflecting the last golden rays that filter through the canopy above. His guitar, weathered and loved, rests easily in his hands, as if it has always belonged there. The instrument's wood has been kissed by countless performances, its surface smooth from the touch of fingers that speak in the language of melody and rhythm. Around him, friends settle into the soft earth like flowers finding their perfect spots in a garden. Some lean against tree trunks, others sprawl on soft patches of grass, all drawn together by the invisible magnetism of shared musical exploration. The air carries the mingled scents of eucalyptus and wild sage, creating a natural incense that seems to bless their gathering. Somewhere in the distance, the Pacific Ocean whispers its eternal song, adding its voice to the symphony of evening sounds. The air is filled with the hum of friends, sometimes laughter, sometimes deep quiet, always the sense of belonging, as if the earth itself has stopped to listen. The Grateful Dead's music does not force itself into being, but unfurls with the inevitability of sunrise. Fingers move softly over strings, weaving notes that wind between redwood trunks and into the hearts of those who drift near. Jerry's playing style embodies the very spirit of the community around him, unhurried, exploratory, generous. His fingers dance across the fretboard with the fluid grace of water finding its course, each note emerging not from technical precision, but from deep emotional honesty. When he plays, it's as if he's having a conversation with the universe, asking questions through melody and receiving answers in the form of harmonic discoveries that even him surprise. The other musicians join in organically, adding layers like painters working on the same canvas. A bass line emerges, deep and steady as a heartbeat, while gentle percussion comes from hands patting knees and fingers tapping on guitar bodies. Someone begins to hum, then others join, their voices blending like different colored streams flowing into the same river. The music
Chapter 5. Janis and the Wildflower Heart. Like a bright wildflower driven on a sweet breeze from Port Arthur, Texas, Janis Joplin arrived in Haight-Ashbury with a heart as open as the sky. Her laugh, joyful, honest, and untamed, floated down painted staircases and out onto the sun-warmed porches of Victorian homes. The city welcomed her arms wide, and Janis gave herself freely to its gentle embrace. Janis moved through the painted streets like a force of nature contained in human form, her presence both powerful and tender, wild and nurturing. Her hair caught the California sunlight like spun gold, and her eyes held depths that spoke of both joy and pain, transformed into something beautiful. When she walked, it was with the confident stride of someone who had traveled far to find home and recognized it the moment she arrived. The Victorian boarding house where she first stayed became a hub of creativity and laughter. Her room, small but bright, filled quickly with the artifacts of an artist's life. Notebooks scribbled with song lyrics, harmonicas scattered across windowsills, scarves and jewelry that caught the light and threw it back in rainbow fragments. Her clothes hung like colorful flags from every available surface, creating a tapestry of textures and hues that reflected her vibrant spirit. She brought the warmth of southern summer evenings into shaded parlors where her stories and songs grew like morning glory vines. In kitchens blooming with a scent of patchouli and baking bread, Janis's voice rang out, part song, part laughter, all love. Listeners gathered, drawn not just to her music, but to her kindness. Her joy spilled out in every note and gesture, a sunlit invitation for all to belong. In those early days, Janis discovered the coffee houses and folk clubs that lined Haight Street like beads on a necklace. The Jabberwocky became her second home, its small stage witnessing the birth of a legend in the form of late-night performances that left audiences breathless and transformed. Her voice, raw and powerful as a thunderstorm, yet tender as rainfall, could fill a room with emotion so pure
It brought tears to eyes and healing to hearts. Between sets, she would sit with other musicians and dreamers, sharing stories that painted pictures of the South she'd left behind. Tales of summer nights spent listening to blues records on front porches, of gospel choirs that taught her how to pour her soul into song, of the loneliness that had driven her west in search of kindred spirits. Her stories became part of the neighborhood's growing mythology, adding texture to the tapestry of experiences that made Haight-Ashbury feel like the center of a new world being born. In those earliest days, Janis was more than a legend. She was a friend, a wildflower among wildflowers, her soul rooted in the community's nurturing soil. Her presence colored every gathering with possibility and warmth, each night ending in a soft chorus of gratitude for the love she brought into every room. Her apartment became a sanctuary where musicians gathered to experiment and explore, drawn by her generous spirit and her willingness to share both her talent and her vulnerability. The walls echoed with impromptu jam sessions that lasted until dawn, with conversations about art and life that felt like prayers, with laughter that seemed to heal old wounds and make space for new dreams. Janis had found her tribe, and they had found her wildflower heart. Chapter 6. The Gentle People Gather. As weeks drifted into months, Haight-Ashbury blossomed into a patchwork of gentle souls, each one seeking fellowship and a taste of freedom. Young dreamers from every corner arrived, their pockets light, but their hearts full of songs and longing. They came on buses and in painted vans, in borrowed cars and on foot, carrying everything they owned in backpacks and guitar cases. From suburban bedrooms in Ohio and farm towns in Kansas, from the concrete canyons of New York and the endless highways of Middle America, they arrived like migrating birds, following an ancient instinct towards something they couldn't quite name but recognize when they found it. The Haight became a living experiment in alternative community, where the rules of the straight world seemed suspended in favor of something more organic and human. Crash pads opened their doors to strangers who quickly became family, and communal houses sprouted like mushrooms after rain, each one developing its own personality and customs while remaining connected to the larger tapestry of the neighborhood. They found each other on doorsteps where laughter lingered, in living rooms where records spun softly, and among kitchen tables rich with shared meals. The world slowed down in these moments. A handful of rice, a loaf of bread, a borrowed sweater, these were gifts given and received, tying invisible ribbons of community around new friendships. The economics of survival took on new meaning in this environment of voluntary simplicity and mutual aid. Money became less important than creativity, less valuable than kindness. A poet could trade verses for a meal. An artist might paint a mural in exchange for a place to sleep. And musicians found that their melodies opened doors and hearts with equal ease. The neighborhood developed its own informal currency of generosity and goodwill. Free stores appeared in storefronts filled with donated clothing, books, and household items available to anyone who needed them. The Diggers, a theater group turned social activists, organized free food distributions in Golden Gate Park, serving meals that were equal parts nourishment and political statement. Their philosophy was simple. Everything belongs to everyone, and human needs should be met without the mediation of money or the judgment of worthiness. In overgrown gardens, hands reached for the earth and for each other, planting vegetables and hope side by side. Sunset brought concerts on stoops and blankets spread like rafts on the sea of lawn, everyone swaying gently as guitars, hand drums, and harmonies filled the twilight. Strangers became siblings beneath California stars, each evening ending as a family, each morning beginning with the promise of gentle togetherness. Victory gardens bloomed in backyards and empty lots, tended by those who understood that growing food was both practical necessity and spiritual practice. The act of planting seeds became a metaphor for the larger cultivation happening in the community, the growth of consciousness, the flowering of new ways of being human together. Children played between the rows of vegetables, learning that tomatoes and community could grow in the same soil.
Chapter 7. Golden Gate Mornings. When sunlight began to trickle through the ancient eucalyptus and cypress of Golden Gate Park, the world took on a golden peace. The first awakenings belonged to those who gathered in quiet circles, stretching their bodies and hearts in gentle yoga, their breath rising with the morning mist. The park in the early hours belonged to a special tribe of morning seekers, those who had discovered that the day's first light held a particular magic, a pristine quality that afternoon and evening could never quite recapture. They came barefoot across dew-soaked grass, carrying yoga mats made from scraps of carpet or simple blankets, their faces soft with sleep and bright with anticipation of sunrise communion. In the meadows near the Panhandle, small groups formed naturally, drawn together by the shared ritual of greeting the day with intentional movement and breath. An impromptu teacher might emerge, someone who had learned a few poses from a book or remembered movements from a dance class, and would gently guide the others through stretches that honored both body and spirit. The poses had no names in Sanskrit. They were simply ways of saying good morning to muscles and joints, to the earth below and the sky above. Slowly, the park rustled to life, the delicate strum of an acoustic guitar, the rhythmic swish of paintbrush on paper, and the soft patter of bare feet in dew-laced grass. The air brimmed with contentment. Words drifted like feathers between friends, soft conversations about dreams, about yesterday's magic, about tomorrow's hope. Artists emerged from the morning mist like characters from a fairy tale, carrying easels and sketch pads, watercolors and charcoal, seeking the perfect spot to capture the park's awakening beauty. They scattered throughout the landscape like seeds on the wind, some settling beside ponds to paint the reflection of clouds on still water, others finding inspiration in the way morning light filtered through redwood groves, creating cathedral columns of golden air. Musicians appeared as if summoned by the dawn itself, their instruments becoming voices in the park's morning chorus. A flute joined the birdsong in the treetops, while a guitar provided gentle accompaniment to the whisper of wind-curled leaves. These weren't performances in any conventional sense, but offerings, gifts of sound given freely to anyone who happened to be near enough to listen. Chapter 9. Music Box Memories. As twilight deepened, the neighborhood's hidden studios glowed like lanterns. Heavy velvet curtains and soft lamplight cradled night after night of musical dreams. Here, among old wood floors and walls lined with faded posters, magic happened quietly. The studio at 2400 Fulton Street existed in a converted Victorian mansion, its rooms transformed into sonic sanctuaries where the boundaries between art and life dissolved completely. The main recording room occupied what had once been a grand parlor. Its high ceilings and ornate moldings provided natural acoustics that no modern studio could
ever replicate. Persian rugs covered the hardwood floors, not just for decoration, but to absorb sound and create the warm, intimate atmosphere that became the signature of so many recordings made during this golden era. Equipment filled the space with a gentle hum of anticipation. Tube amplifiers that glowed like electronic hearths. Microphones that had captured the voices of jazz legends in previous decades. And mixing boards that were works of analog art. The tape machines, massive Ampex recorders that required 2 people to lift, sat like benevolent metallic creatures in the corner, their reels slowly turning as they captured the essence of musical moments that would outlive everyone in the room. Musicians gathered with gentle anticipation, fingers tapping notes that would soon become songs. The analog hum of reel-to-reel tape machines blended with midnight laughter, and every recording session felt like a secret shared with the world. Lyrics were scribbled in hurried handwriting, melodies born and reborn as the hours tiptoed by. The sessions themselves took on the quality of elaborate rituals. Musicians would arrive as the sun set, carrying instruments in battered cases and mason jars filled with herbal tea. Someone would light candles and incense, transforming the studio into a sacred space where creativity could flow unimpeded by the harsh realities of the outside world. The recording process was unhurried, organic. If a song wasn't working, they would set it aside and return to it later, trusting that the music would reveal itself when the time was right. Jerry Garcia might arrive with his guitar and a head of melodies that had come to him in dreams, while Grace Slick would bring lyrics written on napkins and scraps of paper, her words capturing the zeitgeist with poetic precision. The studio became a meeting place where different musical tribes could cross-pollinate, where folk musicians learned from blues players, where explorers shared secrets with jazz innovators. In these intimate spaces, creativity was a gift offered in trust and friendship. Harmonies layered gently, voices bathed in warmth. Every song another memory tucked safely away. As sunrise crept close, the music, woven with hope and longing, lingered in the quiet air, wrapping everyone in a sleepy, musical embrace. The engineers who worked these sessions were artists in their own right, understanding that their job was not just to capture sound, but to preserve the essence of moments that would never come again. They worked with hands that knew every knob and fader intimately. Ears that could detect the subtlest changes in acoustic space, hearts that understood the spiritual significance of the music being created. The mixing console became their instrument, and the final recordings were collaborative artworks that bore the fingerprints of everyone involved. Between takes, musicians would share stories and laughter, passing around guitars and discovering new combinations of voices and instruments. The studio became a laboratory for musical experimentation where conventional rules were gently set aside in favor of intuition and emotional honesty. Mistakes became happy accidents, and accidents often became the most magical moments in the finished recordings.
Chapter 10: The Love That Lingered. Long after the crowds thinned and the echo of footsteps faded from the painted streets, the gentle spirit of Haight-Ashbury remained, softly humming in the city's heart. The love spun into every song, every shared meal, every embrace, drifted through open windows and down sunlit lanes. The neighborhood's transformation was gradual, like seasons changing, barely perceptible day by day, yet undeniable when viewed across the span of months and years. The tour buses arrived first, filled with curious suburbanites seeking glimpses of the hippies they had heard on the evening news. What had been an organic community of seekers slowly became a destination, a museum of counterculture where authenticity struggled to survive alongside commercialization. But something deeper had rooted, something that couldn't be packaged or sold or destroyed by changing fashions. The musicians who had found their voices in the Haight-Ashbury carried those voices to stages around the world. The artists who had discovered new ways of seeing in the painted Victorian parlors brought that vision to galleries and studios across the globe. The writers who had penned poems in coffee shops went on to chronicle the changes they had witnessed, ensuring that the stories would survive even when the original storytellers were gone. The music, the art, and the sense of belonging settled like dust in the corners of every old house, in the gardens and memories tenderly held. Artists, neighbors, and dreamers carried what they found here into the world. Lessons of kindness, creativity, and the belief that peace was possible. Children who had grown up running through the heights during the Summer of Love became teachers and social workers, therapists, and community organizers, carrying forward the values they had absorbed like sunlight during those formative years. They understood, in ways their parents' generation often didn't, that cooperation was more powerful than competition, that diversity strengthened rather than threatened community, that love was indeed a revolutionary force. The Victorian houses remained, their painted facades weathering but enduring, each one holding within its walls the echoes of conversations that had changed the world. New residents moved in, some drawn by the neighborhood's history, others simply by the beauty of the architecture and the gentleness of the remaining community. The gardens that had been planted with vegetables and hope continued to bloom, tended by new hands that understood the spiritual significance of growing things. Haight-Ashbury's legacy unfolded with the ease of autumn leaves, subtle, quiet, and beautiful. To walk those streets, to remember the gentle journey, is to be held still by the echo of that summer of love, a time and place where peace, music, and community were not just dreams, but lived and shared realities. The music venues evolved, but never entirely disappeared. The Fillmore continued to host concerts, its walls absorbing decades of sound and story.
Small clubs opened and closed, but there always were stages where young musicians could learn their craft, where established artists could experiment, where the conversation between performer and audience could continue in intimate settings. The neighborhood's commitment to nurturing creativity remained constant, even as the specific forms that creativity took continued to evolve. Record stores persisted, adapting to new technologies while maintaining their role as cultural gathering places. Coffee shops came and went, but the tradition of spaces where strangers could become friends over shared cups and conversations endured. The physical manifestations changed, but the spirit, the understanding that community was sacred, that art mattered, that love was the most powerful force for change, remained embedded in the neighborhood's DNA. In that peaceful knowing, the story drifts to a hush. The city sleeps, and the dreams of the summer of love float onward, gentle and true. The painted ladies stand as monuments to a time when the world seemed infinitely malleable, when young people believed they could create paradise through the simple acts of being kind to one another and making beautiful music together. Their colors may fade and be refreshed, their inhabitants may change with each passing generation, but they remain as witnesses to the truth that transformation is possible, that love can indeed be a way of life, that music has the power to heal hearts and change minds. In the end, the summer of love was not just a moment in time, but a seed planted in the consciousness of humanity. Its flowering continues in every act of compassion, every song sung from the heart, every gathering where strangers become friends, every garden planted with hope for a more beautiful tomorrow. The gentle revolution that began in those painted streets continues, quiet but persistent, a soft humming in the world's heart that reminds us that peace, love, and music are not just memories of a distant time, but living possibilities that await our choice to embrace them.